Happy to be with you here again today. We're on session 23, but we're actually starting with module 26, where we talk about encouraging others because that benefits others as well as benefiting yourself and your community. Have some other modules we're going to go over in this session as well. Let's get started. In December 1999, at the end of 1999, I traveled to New Zealand to watch the new millennium sunrise. And trying to see the sunrise through the clouds lasted like 5 minutes. So I spent the other 2 weeks sightseeing. And I caught a few movies at night at a cinema in Auckland. Each show started with some advertising. In one ad, the government called for the creation of a New Zealand film industry. I seriously laughed out loud. Film production in New Zealand? They're going to compete with Hollywood? That'll never happen, I chuckled. About a year later, the greatest film series of all time, Lord of the Rings, was filmed in New Zealand. The Chronicles of Narnia and The Last Samurai were soon filmed in New Zealand, and King Kong. The country was overrun by orcs, a giant gorilla, and a talking lion, and I was a liar. The lesson: when a community pledges support for people, they're more likely to reach their creative potential. And as an aside, the New Zealand Tourism Board has requested that I clarify that all of the orcs were costumed actors. The country is completely safe for tourists. In the last few modules, we've explored individual versus group creative processes. Another principle, creativity as a social experience, flourishes when a society is tolerant of both failure and weirdness. Richard Florida has analyzed creative places, what he calls creative cities. He said that some cities are more successful because they attract creative people. Creative places require talent, technology, and tolerance. So encouraging alternative lifestyles, cool architecture, cool restaurants, these bring the creative people to your city. Now, social scientists, through multiple studies, have largely disproven Florida's theory, but the idea that creative societies need openness is intriguing. Morris Stein was one of the early researchers in creativity. He made it clear: a society fosters creativity to the extent that it encourages openness and discourages creativity when social pressures to conformity are so intense that deviations are punished through social isolation and ostracism. We've actually mentioned Morris Stein earlier. Many people succeed in closed societies. Many people fail in open societies. But in open societies, more people attempt creative projects. You don't need an open society because you have creative courage. But others who are just starting their creative journeys, they might need more openness. So you should encourage them. Perceived failure and tolerance, PFI, that was the topic of my dissertation. And PFI is basically being afraid people will laugh if you fail, so you refuse to try. It's an actual thing. People are less likely to try if they worry about being judged for failing. They struggle to cross the chasm that separates real creators from the wannabes. So there's all these people who want to be creative, who want to start ventures, become entrepreneurs, but many of them fall into this chasm, give up, so they never become successful entrepreneurs. And this is true not only for societies, it's also true for organizations. If you work for a company that allows mistakes and failures, your chance of success will increase. Creativity is supported by environments that allow autonomy and tolerance and provide the resources necessary for the individual to maintain independence. That's a quote actually from a study that we've referenced earlier by Renko and Sumners. This is important to know if you lead a creative team now or in the future. Allow people to make mistakes. I want you, dear reader or dear viewer, to be an eminent creator, and I hope you'll stand up for creativity. When someone suggests that the arts are a waste, speak up. When people ridicule others' failures, speak up. So, in summary, if you lead a team, encourage openness and allow mistakes. and encourage your society, your community to forgive mistakes and personally ignore haters. Module 27 is the advice to run away from home. I traveled to coastal China, the industrialized part of the country, and interviewed the owner of a huge corporate empire. He divulged confidential business information, so I've changed his name here to Mr. Gao. Mr. Gao manages, it's a huge conglomerate covering multiple industries. He seems relaxed, he wears a baseball cap, but the strain is evident. He describes the burden of 50,000 employees. He says their families rely on me for their livelihoods. That pressures him to keep his empire profitable, which he does through constant innovation. In his quest for creativity and innovation, Gao takes a philosophical approach. He sounds like a combination of Confucius and Bill Gates. He shared his observations with me. For example, more Chinese parents are sending their children overseas to study. The purpose is not for better education, but for intercultural exposure to help them break thinking patterns. Being able to break your thinking patterns is crucial for creativity, and to do that, you should spend time in a foreign culture. Wealthy Chinese parents understand that. Here's an example where this works. Hamdi was born on a farm in a small village in eastern Turkey. He moved to New York City to attend university. He soon realized he really was at heart a country boy, so he moved to upstate New York. One day, his father visited from Turkey and said, he said, American cheese really is terrible. Why not try to make cheese like we did back home and sell it? He tried. He ended up pivoting. He switched to making yogurt, the kind of yogurt, Greek or Turkish yogurt, and soon dominated the market. And within 5 years, his company, Chobani, became a $1 billion company. So his story teaches two lessons. First, welcoming immigrants is good. They bring new ideas. Secondly, personal exposure to other cultures is very stimulating to creativity. There's something that we call the Galapagos Effect. So here's the question. What if the world had only one culture? And the answer is innovation would suffer. The Galapagos Effect is very powerful for innovation. And so I'm going to explain the concept. The Galapagos Islands, they were very isolated for a long time. So animals and plants evolved to become unique from continental plants and animals. Charles Darwin discovered the many unique species, and we can see the same effect in cross-border innovation. So humans face the same universal problems. How can I avoid illness? How do I find someone to love? Where can I find food? Creators in each culture develop different solutions. In culture A, they come up with solution X. In culture B, they produce solution Y. So there's two different possible solutions for the same problem. In the future, new problems are going to arise, and cultures A solutions might fail due to climate change, demographic shifts, or a plague, and so they can borrow culture B's creative solution. So I spent actually 2 years researching this topic. I gathered teams and tested their creative output. Some teams were culturally diverse, and some were culturally similar. The research results is that first, culturally diverse teams are not always more creative, but teams are more creative if they have members with more diverse experience. The most creative teams have people who are similar but have diverse cultural experience. The optimal creative team, members are culturally similar, but each member has deep experience with cultural and functional diversity. For example, you could have 4 people from Britain who have deep experience in other cultures and functions, Russian marketing experience, Chinese gerontology experience, logistics experience in Myanmar, accounting experience in Mexico. And then you bring these people together because they have a shared culture, they can communicate well, but they can share their ideas and experiences, which build and on each other, creating more and more ideas. The rich music traditions of the US, including ragtime, rock, country, hip hop, soul, pop, salsa, jazz, etc., 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 are possible because of the influence of imported genres. How can you be more creative? Backpack across Asia, or make friends with people in your community who come from different backgrounds. So let's continue on to module 28. This is how to learn from other cultures. Module 27 said that we should. This is how to do it. To investigate this process, I took 10 students to Bangkok, Thailand. The students originated from 4 different countries, and they were all investigating venture startup opportunities. Bangkok it's a very energetic city. The environment is unique enough to mentally stimulate visitors. My objective was to learn about how people can be entrepreneurially alert. I used ethnographic techniques to study the participants. I followed the participants around for a week, watching them, then repeatedly interviewed them. On the next page are some principles I learned about opportunity recognition. So the keys to cross-border opportunity recognition are: first, have a prior knowledge about some field or industry. 2 is speak directly with local people, not going to secondary sources. 3rd is feel respectful towards the local culture. 4th is talk to locals about ideas to open inspiration channels on other topics. 5th is to stay entrepreneurially alert after you return home. My rules for international travel: when I travel to a new country, I always try to visit a local grocery store, see where people gather sustenance for themselves, how they do that. I try to ride public transportation, whether it's a subway, tuk-tuk, or other option. And I talk to local people as much as I can, especially older people. So try exercising your intercultural borrowing muscle. Name some products, customs, or institutions that are unique to your country that you think are not available in other countries. And kind of list up a few of them. And then say, could any of these be applied to another country or maybe to another industry or field? Next, name some products, customs, or institutions that you've seen in other countries that you don't have in your country. Right. List them up and then say, could they be transplanted to your country or to your industry or to your field? When I travel, I try to stay alert. I take photos and notes. When I see a new idea, I store the photos in apps such as Evernote and Bear. International travel is not available to everyone, so start with local travel if that's the only option. Start small. Start with baby steps. Next time, we're going to delve into Module 29.